Welcome to the Bedrock Engineers Podcast, bringing you robot combat discussions for people who don't know what they're talking about.
It's carnage here in the Battlebots! Oh! Huge hit there! Now he's a fire-breathing dragon! Hey! Hold on! Woo! I feel like I'm in a scene from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre! Getting, we're gonna need a bot medic!
Here are your hosts, Ben and Scott.
I had some questions for you about brushless drive.
Oh, well, don't ask me considering our performance.
Yeah.
Could Duck be going brushless next year? I look forward to that.
Yeah, we've been trying for 3 years.
2 inches of steel on that face. Oh, think of the potential. Are you guys going to 3D print your whole chassis with that Valkyrie 3D printer thing that they were advertising?
No.
Good.
We're going to 3D print titanium.
That's a big brain play right there.
Yeah.
Should we go ahead and get started with the episode then?
Sure.
Welcome to the Bedrock Engineers Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Ben, Mokemeister from Reddit. This is my co-host, Scott. Say hi, Scott.
Hey, everybody.
And we're joined by 2 guests here tonight. Hal Rucker from Team Black and Blue. Say hi, Hal.
Hi, Hal.
We've got Zach Goff as well, the team captain of Copperhead. What's up, Zach?
You know, Ben, I wasn't going to do this, but then you said Hal was going to be on. I'm like, I got to be there.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I may have forgotten to tell Hal that you were going to be here, which is why Hal was so surprised when we started this call.
He probably would have said he wouldn't
This
do it
is
then.
ridiculous.
Well, and we're here to talk about the Last Chance episode 14, and I'm hyped because this was a great episode. Not a single bad fight.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys put on great performances, just like everybody else. No, everyone was a worthy opponent for their own opponent. Even the Rumble, which I think was one of the least memorable things of the night, was still great. And we'll get to that, of course. But we should start with the first fight, which was Quantum versus Valkyrie. And I was not expecting Quantum to win this.
Nor was I.
Yeah. I'm really wondering why Valkyrie didn't start upside down. Once they got upside down, they actually were taking big chunks out of Quantum's what do you call it, jaw or the skull on the top. I'm just wondering, like, is that legal? Like Hal, if you wanted to start, like, do you have to make sure that Duck, which is basically the same upside down and right side up, is the correct way up before you start?
No, you can start in either orientation. In fact, Marvin started one of its matches upside down for that reason.
Oh, yeah, that's right, against Petunia, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very similar situation.
Well, I completely forgot about that. So this is a bit of a facepalm moment for me. But they got flipped, and once they did, they started working a little better, but their spinner died pretty quick, which really screwed them because Quantum, despite not having a tooth, was just able to control them, and then eventually got them in the screws where they couldn't be levered out by the reversing. Which just kind of makes me think that those screws just have no torque in them if they can't get a robot out of that position.
Yeah, I don't... Is it true that they always reverse them? I don't really understand how that works.
I mean, I think it's actually there's actually like a law for American game shows where you need to, if there's a game show, you need to have every single obstacle be automated, which is why the teams themselves control the pulverizers, and every single arena hazard is on a timer. And the official explanation for Witch Doctor getting spat out of the screws when Blacksmith almost stranded them up there was, for this season we've reprogrammed them so we don't burn out the motors anymore. If they get jammed up, then after a couple seconds they'll turn around. But I feel like this has happened earlier this season. I know it happened in the Remars live event with free shipping because Bronco got them stuck up there. Has it happened to somebody else? I can't remember.
Duck was in there once, and we wiggled out but I think we got some assistance from them reversing the screws.
Well, Duck's also got that lifter that can help him get out. Or,
Yeah.
unless you're talking about last season.
Ah. I don't know, but I was super impressed that Quantum was able to gum Valkyrie. Without the toothpick still could grab them.
Yeah, it definitely became Spectre in spirit as well as body there, because Spectre often got its teeth taken off. I'm wondering why Quantum didn't have 2 teeth in this fight. If it's not steel, then they don't need the extra penetrating power, and they've got double the chance to not get a tooth taken off. So I'm just kind of a little confused on that, but I'm guessing they know, so maybe it is steel. Or maybe they can't pierce titanium with 2 teeth. And surely if it's aluminum, they could get away with 2 teeth, right?
Yes, I can attest to that.
So Hal, what alloy of aluminum is Duck actually made of? Is it 6061?
Yes, it's 6061.
And that, sorry, go on.
We used to use some 7075 for the bumpers, but we gave up on 7075 a couple years ago.
Cracking too much?
Yeah, it splinters.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been running with 2024. It's kind of like right in between the softer and harder.
Mm-hmm.
Had pretty good luck with it on Poison Arrow. It never really cracked. It just kind of deformed and bent. A little extra strength. It was nice.
Well, I
Anyway.
mean, okay, so well, actually, I just forgot what I was going to ask. So, going back to the fight then, I was really impressed by Valkyrie's inertia, because that bar, I keep hiccuping, that bar, despite being rammed into by Quantum's wedge, was not stopping until they eventually hit the wall. That thing just doesn't stop ever. Like, even against Monsoon was like on top of it, and it was spinning and spinning and spinning and not spinning down. It's pretty crazy. I really like watching that robot. It's like a more stable Tombstone almost, because when it gets a hit, it doesn't go like cattywampus flying all over the arena. Hal, what do you think of Valkyrie's like energy? Like, okay, I mean, having fought Tombstone and Last Rites, how do you think Valkyrie actually compares to them?
Well, the problem is I haven't fought Valkyrie, but just visibly it doesn't look like it hits quite as hard. And I think it might be in part because it's a spinning disc instead of a bar, which tends to chip away at you more than just beat you to death.
Well, they were using a bar in this fight.
Kind of.
Go on.
Yeah, you're right. Is this that bow tie shape?
Yeah.
That's true.
They wanted the faster spin-up time.
Right.
Okay. Can I just ask a brief question, nothing to do with this fight? How on earth does Tombstone spin up so dang fast? It's one of the highest inertia spinners in the competition, and it instantly goes up to speed. You'd think it'd take 10 seconds, but no, it takes 3. How? Just how? That makes no sense to me.
Zach, do you want to try?
Well, sure. I will postulate. They use contactors, so it's not current limited. So that thing, those batteries dump 1,000 amps into that motor, and I think that's a big factor in what gets them up to speed so quickly.
Well, if that works so well for them, then why doesn't anybody else have no? Well, I guess I mean, obviously, I don't know anything about that. Do most other people like? I know you guys for Copperhead used a sensorless, brushless motor for the drive of the weapon. So obviously, no big E-Tech in Copperhead. I mean, I'm pretty sure an E-Tech is larger than the entire Copperhead, isn't it?
Yeah. Pretty much would fill up all the space.
Drum spinners kind of need to run brushless motors, don't they? Because they're just the only thing small enough to fit inside them.
There is definitely a limitation on the height of the drum. Yep, that's a very good point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I do think Valkyrie, just in terms of like, yeah, they kind of do pale in comparison to like Tombstone in terms of weapon power. Scott, you've been pretty quiet. What do you think?
What do I think about what?
Well, Valkyrie's weapon power. Like, how do you think they measure up to the other horizontals in the competition?
I mean, I definitely don't think they're as powerful. No doubt about it. I understand the use of the contactor and tombstone, and it certainly sounds like that would dump a lot more power quickly to the motor. Have no idea why everybody wouldn't use one. I mean, anyway, I'm not sure.
I think a lot of people do, but maybe they're just not technical wizards like Ray. What were you going to say, Zach?
The other thing that Tombstone has had to do recently, since Battlebots implemented the 250 mile per hour tip speed limit, is Ray has had to gear Tombstone down a lot more, because he used to run like a 400 mile per hour tip speed. Just ludicrous.
When there was a 300 mile an hour tip speed limit? Or was that just bogus?
When there wasn't a limit. Yeah, there was no limit.
So, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's only been the past 2 seasons now that rule has been enforced. So that's the other big factor why Tombstone gets up to speed so quickly. He's got a lot more gearing now.
Yeah. Well, that changes everything. Everything. Because everybody thinks there's a 300 mile an hour tip speed limit for the ABC seasons. You're telling me there wasn't a one at all?
I don't think there was. I think it was like 400 miles an hour or something.
Jeez. Oh man. Wow, that's mind blowing. Ray did tell me that as well, though. Was it an AMA or was it just a question I asked him? But he said, yeah, we remade every weapon bar. They're slightly shorter, and we dropped a tooth on the weapon sprocket. And the fastest bar, the aluminum one with the steel teeth, I think he said it was, is about 235 miles an hour. And the fact that it hits exactly as hard as it ever did means that, yeah, engagement matters a lot. Even though it has way less total energy now, 50 AK-47 bullets instead of 6,000 or whatever it was before.
Yeah.
Almost doubling the speed would almost quadruple the power, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, if RPM is squared in the rotational energy calculation. I mean, it's a shame we haven't seen that glorious-looking red bar yet as well. Does anybody have anything more to say on this fight?
I just like it when Valkyrie gets stuck in the vertical. It gets spinning and it's rolling around on 2 wheels like a Segway. I think that's cool.
That was pretty cool.
Its fight against Overhaul last year. Scott, you haven't seen it, have you?
No.
It was an unaired fight for some reason. Well, actually, I know the reason. It's because it was an exhibition fight. It was just for fun. I don't know how Valkyrie won that either. That was completely Overhaul's fight. Well, I don't have anything more to say. What about you, Scott?
Nope.
Zach?
I'm good.
Let us continue.
Alrighty. Yeti versus Duck, or as I like to call this fight, Pain. Because I was so pulling for you, Hal. I really wanted you in the top 16 this year, but fate said Doria, and well, Yeti beat you. And you put up a great fight. Never got knocked out, as always. That's just what we've come to expect, because Duck is an extremely well-built machine. What sorts of ideas did you have in terms of how you could beat Yeti before this fight happened?
In order to understand the Yeti fight, I need to talk about the Lockjaw fight.
Go ahead. Because that was a great fight as well.
Yeah. Our first match against Bombshell, we didn't really learn much about our new lifter. And then in Cobalt, in our match against Cobalt, we didn't have a lifter. So he vaporized it. So the first time we actually got to use it was against Lockjaw, and we learned 2 unfortunate truths. The first is that we knocked out his weapon, or at least we got him to the point where he decided to turn it off. And we didn't get any points for that. So the judges were still ruling that even though we slammed into his weapon with our plow, it was ruled as he broke his own weapon, not that we forced him to stop working. So we didn't get any points for that. And then the second was that we added a spike to the top of our plow and used that as a hammer. And that was perceived by the judges, and I think the audience as well, that we weren't aggressively scoring points. We were just flailing. I mean, lots of people commented that we thought we had lost radio control or something. So
Really?
we weren't getting points for hammering. It just actually worked against us, and we weren't getting points for stopping our opponent's weapon. So, darn it, we were at
Dang
a
it.
loss at that point.
Gosh dang judges.
Yeah. Gosh dang rules. So what do you do when you're going up against Yeti, which is very similar to Lockjaw in a lot of ways? So we just went with what we had, and we tried to break his weapon, and we did. His weapon was broken. It didn't work anymore. And we thought that should be worth some points. And I think we would have won if we had done a better job controlling him after we broke his weapon. But something was slowing down one of my wheels, and I couldn't be as aggressive as I like, so they ended up legitimately beating us. The other thing we discovered in our match against Lockjaw was the geometry on our plow was all screwed up. If we had to get a heavy lift on the beak, instead of lifting our opponent, our front wheels would slide underneath us, and the whole chassis would spin around. So that made it difficult to get a lot of good lifts.
Wait, say that again, Hal. What do you mean exactly?
So visualize our beak being under our opponent
Mm-hmm.
in such a way that they're very heavy on top of our beak.
Yeah.
And when we raise the beak, instead of lifting our opponent, our front wheels slid underneath us backwards.
I understand. Yeah. I understand.
Once that happened, it just spun the whole chassis in the air.
Oh, yeah. That did happen.
Yeah, we needed to have forks out in front where the beak was to get the right amount of leverage.
Would if you would have accelerated at the same time you were lifting, would that have counteracted it, you think, or you'd have just slid anyway? And
We tried doing that. It didn't seem to help, but
they're pretty heavy.
That was another reality we had to deal with in this tournament.
So speaking of the chassis spinning, you guys had an AMA, when was it? Like a couple days ago, I think. And I asked you why the lifter was going the wrong direction, and you very graciously replied with just basically it's difficult to tell which direction you're supposed to get it to go because it's hard to remember which direction Duck's body is facing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a little difficult for me to answer that question any better than that because Gabe was controlling the lifter.
Hashtag pray for Gabe. I mean, I feel like that's actually funny how often people forget Gabriel Stroud is actually on Duck's team this year because everybody seems to kind of have forgotten about him since Robot Wars ended. You know, press F to pay respects, but yeah, people don't meme him as much as they used to. I haven't seen one in like the past year, so. But yeah. So I actually have a quick question for. I'll let Zach answer first. What would have happened, do you think, if Copperhead had been Duck's opponent instead of Yeti?
Well, Copperhead probably would have done what it always does and lost the drive motor and hobbled around the whole match. Because Duck is invincible. I got to channel a little more Duck into Copperhead.
It's always interesting to think about how forks will interact because Copperhead has two forks that are on either side of its drum, and Hal has the one long beak that's in the middle. And it's kind of like a little thought experiment. Who's going to get under who? It'd probably be Duck getting under the drum. But then what happens when you drive forward a bit and the forks get underneath Duck's lifter? Or will it be too far up the beak at that point to get under him at all? I just wonder.
That's a lot of forkiness. Yeah.
It's a little bit even harder to visualize because we designed our plow so that the plow doesn't touch the ground. Only the tip of the beak does. So if you get past the beak, it's really easy to get under the plow.
The sides don't touch the ground?
No.
Oh. I never would have noticed that if you hadn't just told me that.
Yeah, because the floor is uneven, and if the plow is touching the ground, then the beak might not.
By the way, just to put this spinner-proof debate to rest, is Duck's beak a wedge, Hal? Or is it a fork?
I think of it as a fork on a vertical plate, because we're not trying to wedge our opponent. We're trying to intentionally ram into them.
Yeah. I think of forks as something that is literally for the sole purpose of getting underneath the opponent and not for taking hits. That would be a wedge.
Yeah.
And then a wedgelet is a tiny projection coming out of something that is already a wedge. That's how I think of everything. So Bite Force in my mind has forks. It doesn't have wedgelets, as people often call them.
Yeah.
I know it's going to be a controversial idea, but yeah, Bite Force's wedgelets, they're actually forks. Fight me IRL if you disagree. I know Copperhead definitely has forks though. Does anybody have anything more to say about? Well, actually, I do have something more to another thing to ask you, Hal. With that, I mean, I listened to Robocast. Was it Robocast that you were on recently? Talking about Duck's Lifter and how it's going to need to change for next year.
Yeah, it might have been the AMA that we were talking about it, but it doesn't matter. Yes, go ahead.
Well, what sorts of ideas do you have to improve the lifter for next season?
The problem with Duck is that it was never really designed from the ground up. It was always a compromise to get things done in time. And one of the things that's dumb about Duck is that the fork or the beak is attached to the plow. It would be smarter to have the thing that lift independent of the plow, kind of like Whiplash does without the weapon. But you know, their protective plow doesn't go up and down; only the lifter part does. And a lot of our vulnerability is the stupidity of raising the whole plow in the air and exposing the chassis to the weapon. Right? It's just dumb.
Right. So, in your mind, sorry.
Go ahead.
In your mind, a duck that has a lifter that only is like a stick with the beak on the tip and the plow doesn't move, that would be the ideal solution.
Yes, and then we could also do different plow geometries based on who we are going against.
You know, I can picture that perfectly in my head. Imagine a duck's neck and its head. It would actually look even more like a real duck if only the beak and the long neck lifted up, like Whiplash's thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
and then the plow, you wouldn't even need a gap between the two halves of the plow like Whiplash has. You could just have it be one solid piece of steel all the way across, and then the tips of that could look like a duck's wings. Ooh. Oh man! Oh, I'm like twirling my mustache here with my just insane IQ right now.
You want a job?
I would love to be on Team Duck. Actually, I'm quite a good machinist. Although I think what y'all are doing is a little more advanced than what I'm used to, which is basically blocks.
If you want to be a true BattleBots person, you have to pay a lot of money to be on my team. We'll feed you mediocre food.
You'll feed me.
And you can't sleep for 3 months.
You'll because there's no sleeping when you're migrating south for the winter, right?
Right.
As ducks do. You got to watch out for hunters shooting you. Would you ever want to fight Double Jeopardy? Actually.
What do you do against that? I don't know.
I think their cannon is a little too high up to even hit Duck.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, that's all I have to say about this fight. Yeti, I shouldn't take any credit away from them. Their drum does shitloads of damage. Duck's face got completely caved in, which I was really surprised about. It's how thick, Hal? 3/4, 7 inch thick?
Through most of it. It's got it's got ribbing in the back.
All right.
So that's another dumb thing about the plow is it's got that long stretch of material in between the supports on the sides. It shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. Well, that's all I have to say. What about you, Scott? You got anything more?
No, I'm good, man.
Zach?
Should I mention that I really wanted to win that match?
I really think this should have been Ribot and Duck. I would have loved to see that. And I'm sad Ribot didn't get another chance after how well they did.
Amen.
Well, Zach, you got anything more to say?
Hal, are you already starting to design for season 5 now?
No.
Did I interpret that right? No. Okay.
I am playing with brushless motors, trying to understand that, but
Yeah.
I've been doing that for 3 years and still don't get it.
Hannah's listening right behind Hal, like writing notes, like, okay, yes, that's good. The neck thing, and then the wingtips, all that.
No, everything I do is dumb.
Should we move on then to Lockjaw versus Scorpios, another fight that happened in Remars?
Oh, that's true.
I was expecting a very different result, actually, because Scorpios wasn't using its regular delicate saw in this fight. It was using its proper dinky-looking but actually quite effective hammer saw, and actually Lockjaw kicked his ass way harder than it did at Remars. I think the real thing to debate in this fight is crab walking. What is it, and why does it not count as movement sometimes?
Well, since I'm the resident expert on crab walking now,
I was just about to say, Zach, you got boned real hard by this against Kronos.
I got this.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I mean, really, it's what makes good TV. So if a robot can only go in circles and can't show any sort of directional movement through crab walking, yeah, should be counted out. Nobody wants to watch that. It's boring, especially in our Kronos match, because Kronos couldn't really do anything but bump into us at that point. It's like, what would be the point of letting that fight go on? So definitely the right call there. However, in our Waiachi fight, we still had enough traction with the crab walk and the drum going at the same time that we could move in a direction intentionally, and so that's still considered controlled motion. So you wouldn't get counted out for that, and it put on a great fight, and that's ultimately the goal of the show.
Yeah. I mean, thing is that, like, okay, so here's how I define crab walking. I define crab walking as what Scorpios was doing while they weren't getting counted out, and then if you're just pivoting on the spot, that's just pivoting on the spot. Crab walking, in my mind, is moving. And Scorpios and Copperhead, when they got counted out while they were, in my mind, crab walking, they both managed to go like halfway across the arena while being counted out. So I don't get it. I don't get it, man.
Well, I think in our Kronos fight that was some clever editing, because we were in reality we weren't going anywhere.
Why
so I'm not sure.
It that way?
I'm not sure how they managed to portray that so well, but yeah, it was definitely not controlled in our case against Kronos.
All right, well, I'll forgive that, but until we get Zachary Lighthall in here, we won't know why Scorpios got counted out. Like, they go half the fight doing that exact thing, don't get counted out, all of a sudden for no reason. Oh, you guys aren't moving. 10-9. Yeah, I don't get it.
They got counted out because they were crab walking.
They got counted out for.
I mean, it's just like Zach said, man. It's just like Zach said. They don't want to just see someone just spin around on half their drive system. I mean, it sucks, but that's how it is, That's how it is, man.
I mean,
I don't understand why you call it crab walking. That's not how crabs walk.
Yeah, crabs walk sideways.
Yeah.
This is more like animal with a broken leg walking.
It's more like zombie walking. Yeah.
They really, your friends stole your crutches and you're hobbling on your cast, trying to catch up to them, screaming, "Hey, man, give me back my crutches!" That's what this is. Right. You're still moving though, so. I mean, the idea of sacrificing integrity for the sake of entertainment is something I'll always find really shady, and I won't agree with. I don't think ever. I mean, in my mind, if it's going to be a boring fight, then don't end it early. Just let it go on, because the guy who's not crab walking could just suddenly break down and die.
And how interesting would that be?
Well, it wouldn't be, but you could edit it. I mean, I swear Wanhu versus Railgun Max was edited down to 45 seconds when it actually went the full 3 minutes. So, it can be done. It
shouldn't be done, though.
I don't know, man. I don't know. At the end of the day, it is a TV show. You're right, but it just will never sit right with me, Well, anyway, I thought this was a good fight as well. Is somebody trying to talk? You're glitching up.
Nope.
Oh.
Can I say something
Yeah.
about this topic of whether someone should get credit for breaking the opponent's weapon
Yeah, go for it.
versus having their own weapon break? So, Zach, I'd like to hear what you say about this too. So here's something stupid to say just for the sake of conversation. So let's say Duck is going up against Bronco. Bronco tosses Duck 10 feet in the air. Duck is at the apex of the launch, and no damage has been done yet to Duck. Okay, then gravity takes over. Gravity slams Duck into the steel floor and breaks the wheel. Should Bronco get credit for damaging the wheel?
Well, Bronco's the reason. Oh, sorry.
Well, no, gravity and the steel floor was the reason, not Bronco. And why is that different than someone slamming into a weapon with their steel plate and breaking the weapon?
It's not. It's not.
It's really
you
not.
should get credit. Bronco should get credit for the damage, and you should get credit for the damage of slamming into them. That's what I think.
I would agree.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. Duck. Okay, so like I was gonna say earlier, I that was what I forgot. I think unless I'm just being stupid. Like when I first watched Lockjaw and Duck's fight, the fact that Lockjaw started smoking and their weapon wasn't working very well, I thought that was just because they were overheating. I didn't think about like, okay, maybe Duck did that. I mean, obviously, Duck did do that in a matter of speaking, because you were making them spin up over and over again, which draws a lot of current, a lot of amps going through the weapon motor or motors,
Right.
and then they overheat. But like I think having their weapon break through that machination is a little too far in the direction of did you actually do it or not? Because if their weapon suddenly stops working with no smoke, then clearly Duck is the one that dislodged something in Lockjaw from the recoil. I don't think anyone can debate that. But if they overheat eventually, like 2.5 minutes into the fight, it might just be, well, maybe they're just failing to kill you, and their weapon keeps having to be, spun back up from zero, and it's drawing too much current, and yada yada yada. Like, I think that's a little too far in the direction of maybe we shouldn't give Duck the damage points. What do you think, Hal?
I think I agree with you. I mean, obviously, I'm being silly that suggesting that Bronco didn't cause the damage, but it doesn't seem that different to me. And it is difficult to know whether Lockjaw's smoking because they're just overheating themselves or because of something Duck did.
Yeah.
Well,
I
was
guess,
there anything
yeah,
else? Is there anything else you wanted to say about that, Zach?
No, I think that all pretty well makes sense. And yeah, it is hard to see what robot is doing the damage in a lot of cases. So it ends up being a very subjective decision-making process.
It does.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Let's okay, wait, before we move on, does anybody else have anything to say about this fight then, other than just it was a cool fight and I don't understand the mobility rules?
No, I was a little surprised that Lockjaw was able to get under Scorpio so well.
Yeah, me too. That was impressive. I think he was actually running his forks in reverse, because occasionally you'd see Lockjaw, pop up on his back wheels.
Yeah, he did that to me too.
Yeah,
He does that to everybody as well. Like his front wheels would come up off the floor because those forks are motorized, and he can, like, I'm guessing it's a button they press and hold, other than instead of like relying on the guy to feather the throttle just enough to not make Lockjaw flip over backward.
Yeah, he might have like a current control on his speed controller, so he can control the torque.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here. Scorpios and Sawblaze have these forks where it's like, in my mind, I cannot convince myself that Scorpios or Sawblaze's forks are pushing against the ground with any kind of force. Like, in my mind, they are just barely like skittering against the ground, and most things could probably outwedge them and get under them. I don't know, like, just I can't convince myself that that's anything but the case. It's weird, it's like a robot like Copperhead, very clearly its forks are smushed against the ground real hard because, the wheels are way at the back, and then all the weight of the robot is basically on the front, and, those forks probably are going to be very hard to get under. And then you got Sawblaze, which not only has the ability to lift its forks off the ground when it just drives forward, but I don't know, it just looks like they're not pushing against the ground very hard. And of course, Hal, you've got the motorized wedge. You could probably, with a little practice, do the same thing Lockjaw does. I don't know, just it's weird.
I actually talked to Jameson about this a little bit because I've built some two-wheeled robots, and they tend to do wheelies. And Sawblaze does wheelies too, but he still gets underneath people. And he told me that when he's about to collide with another robot, he throws the saw in the opposite direction a little bit. That pushes the dustpan down.
I thought something like that was going on.
That's incredibly skilled. My brain would break if I tried to do that. But he pulls it off really well. I don't know if Scorpios does the same thing, but Jameson told me that's what they do.
Well, Scorpius' arm doesn't touch the ground. It kind of hangs at a 45-degree angle.
In the back? Oh,
yeah. Yeah, it doesn't touch the ground. And also Sawblaze with the Ribot fight, they have these slightly larger stoppers at the back. They're red. And you can see in the fight, even when the arm is a little is at its furthest back point, it still isn't quite touching the ground. So I don't know, like that makes it easier to not do what they did in the blacksmith fight. But at the same time, you think with that heavier dragon blade thing on the back there, it might just lift the forks off the ground a lot more easily. I don't know. Yeah, but that might be why Lockjaw got into Scorpios so easily, is because Scorpios has the same thing going for it, which is its forks maybe don't have very much pressure against the floor. Also very flat as well. Like they have like 6 inches where they're sitting on the floor at the end there, because it almost forms like a spoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scott, anything more to say on that subject?
What subject?
Well, the ground game with robots like Scorpios and Lockjaw.
So obviously, it sounds like Sawblaze, he's a great driver. Do most people have 2 operators for their robot? And is he the only operator for his robot? Does he control the weapon and do that little trick where he moves it in one direction to force the front end down to wedge under people all by himself, or does he have somebody else that's timing that as well?
Who are you asking? Oh, okay.
Yeah, he does that trick by himself.
Okay. Hal, do you have a second operator for your, I guess it sounds like you do, huh?
Yeah, we have a second operator for the lifter, because I can't do 2 things at once.
I would not be able to drive
a
robot like that by myself, I'll tell you what.
I like to be the only operator. We were having some issues with our weapon motor getting started up, though, so occasionally we'd have someone just at the beginning of the match help feather the throttle to get it going in the right direction.
Okay. All right. Do most teams have 2 operators, one for the weapon and one for driving?
It seems pretty common. Yeah, anyone who's got multifunctionality. Yeah. I know Jameson, he plays a lot of Fortnite, I think, so he's well versed in ambidextrous, multidextrous.
I think he is too.
He plays a lot of Overwatch as well.
Oh, Overwatch, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, Overwatch is dead though, so you know.
Oh. Okay.
I did used to like that game, but yeah, nobody really plays it anymore. So have we got everybody's opinions on this fight over and done with? Hal?
Yep.
Zach?
Yep.
Scott?
Yep.
Nice. Okay. The next fight was Hypershock versus the Mega Chungus. And this was the fight of the night, I thought. Amazing contest between these 2 machines. Huge's meme powers were so strong that the Rakes betrayed Hypershock. It's like imagine that Kung Fu Panda meme of Tai Lung with the original quote, "Our battle will be legendary." Just think of that. It's like finally a worthy opponent, because they're both these machines are memes, really. They just are, and they're both very competitive as well. So this was just a great fight. Zach, you've got a vertical spinner as well. What can you realistically do against Huge if you can't reach their body?
Oh, it's those wheels are so juicy, and I think if Hypershock's discs hadn't died so soon, they would have done a lot better in that matchup.
Yeah, they did manage to get pretty close to the spoke at one point, because you could see the what's it called? The little circle in the middle of Huge's wheel was split. Not that affected their driving really, but yeah. And I think Hypershock should have left Huge in the screws for a little while longer, because they might not have been able to get out, but they did get out against Gigabyte when they did that to them. So maybe they would have been able to. I don't know. And Hal, what do you think Duck can do against a robot like Huge?
That's a good question. What can we do against any robot? I would be tempted to leave the plow up vertically, sticking up in the air, and go straight into his weapon like we do. See what happens. If there's a new season and there's a new Duck, we have lots of ideas for plows designed specifically for Huge.
Nice. I can't. Well, I really hope we get to see that at some point. But yeah, Huge just seems like it's almost impossible to fight for a lot of designs, because it just invalidates them. Like Bronco never really had a shot at winning. Well, I guess they did better than I thought they were going to. But like Hydra, who doesn't have that wizard hat, what are they supposed to do? Not much. If they fire that flipper at the wrong time, what?
Sounds like you've got it figured out.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm right about everything, right? You know, me as a non-roboteer, I totally am the expert on all things related to robot combat. I really want a D2 kit for Christmas.
Man, the way to beat them is to tear those wheels off, man.
Unfortunately, Hypershock got a rake stuck in its spinner before it could do that. You know, it's really shocking. Actually, I was definitely expecting those Home Depot rakes to hold up to the forces of robot combat, but shockingly, I was wrong, because they broke really quickly. You know, just dozens of kilojoules of energy being imparted into those 1 millimeter thick cast aluminum tubes broke them. I know. No one saw that coming. You can just tell Will Bales did that because of meme value right there. Like he probably knew that wasn't going to work, and he still did it anyway because it's funny. And speaking of Will Bales, there's one person in the world who had the most fun with this fight, and it was him, because he was laughing his head off when he was getting counted out.
Oh yeah, he's always happy about winning, losing, not sleeping. It's all good to Will.
Maybe he should join Team Duck, because sounds like that's the life over there.
I will say, in Will's defense, he put in a ton of work this season, more work than I've ever seen out of him at one of these events. So, yeah, he was putting in the effort.
He has had a great season, to be fair. He missed out on the top 16 again, but I'll be danged if he didn't try his heart out trying to get there. He lost to Bite Force, and they were like, I think a loss to the reigning unstoppable champion is too much. You're not in the final 16 automatically. So you're going to have to go through a robot that you probably couldn't possibly beat. I did feel bad for him, but clearly he wasn't too miffed about it. He was just happy to put on a great show. I mean,
you know, if I could make a comment about Huge.
Yeah.
Battlebots is getting really hard because all the robots are really good, and there are quite a variety of robots that are good. They're not jokes anymore. So you got to deal with Tombstone, but then you got to deal with Minotaur, And now you got to deal with this crazy thing like Huge. And now there's a couple of pincher robots that can cut right through steel. There's just no easy match anymore, and there's such a variety of weapons you have to think about. It's just getting hard.
I will absolutely agree with that sentiment.
What do you guys think about the idea? So, like, since spinners are so strong, because we now have, 10 vertical spinners in the final 16, and 2 horizontals. There's only wait, how many are there? There's 11 vertical spinners. Sorry. What do you guys think of the idea of getting rid of the active weapon rule? Just allowing 1 or 2 solid wedge bots like Original Sin or like Whoops into the competition to probably balance out all those spinners that are just ruling the world right now. Hal, you own Whoops. What do you think?
Well, the argument against doing that is that wedges killed the old version of Battlebots because they were so effective and so boring. I think that's stupid because Battlebots controls who's admitted into the competition. So like you said, they could limit how many wedges there are. It's also stupid because everyone has a wedge anyway. Well, not everyone, I'm exaggerating, but a lot of robots have wedge configurations anyway, like Rotator or Bite Force. Yeah. So I don't think the arguments against having wedges are good arguments, except for the entertainment value and BattleBots is a TV show, blah, blah, blah. So I actually agree with the rule, even though I'm a victim of it quite often.
I mean, like, I think, yeah, the best way to have a wedge really is probably just to make it so that the wedge itself is not, I mean, you were talking about this earlier, the wedge itself is not the thing that moves for you to have a quote-unquote active weapon. Like, Stinger, it worked. I mean, because, Sewer Snake has a moving wedge normally anyway, so they're not really losing anything by going to BattleBots with Stinger. But something like Vanquish, I think, took it in the wrong direction. They could have a solid wedge that doesn't move at the back of the robot, and then at the front they've got some forks that lift up. I would think that would be the best way to, kill horizontals while at the same time having an active weapon without compromising the structural soundness of the wedge. I mean, I think that probably would be the best way to bring a wedge to BattleBots if it was just a lifter that didn't move its wedge at all.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, sorry, go ahead, Zach.
True story. I actually applied to Season 3 with a robot of that style configuration because we had Poison Arrow in China at the time and couldn't get it ready for Season 3. And the selection committee did its job. It nixed that design. Yep.
Did they say we want Poison Arrow back, or did they say, sorry, we don't want boring wedge bots?
Pretty much the boring wedge bots, yeah. Said, sorry, come back next year, maybe.
Well, that sucks.
There you go.
I mean, I will always be an advocate for removing the active weapon rule and allowing at least one just complete wedge bot with no weapon into the field. But at the same time, I mean, okay, so here's the thing, right? How people constantly accuse BattleBots of having some kind of a bias against you, which I'm not denying that's the bias's existence, but people do say all the time, like, well, every time they put Duck up against a non-spinner, they're just trying to make sure you lose. When in reality, that's just so silly. Putting you against Bronco or Quantum, people always immediately they jump on it like, aha! See? They want Duck to be out of the final 16. They're putting it against a robot that is not guaranteed will lose to Duck. I hate that. I hate this conspiracy tinfoil hat theory. Yeah. And I think a robot like Duck, sorry, I brushed my mic there. A robot like Duck or a robot that has no weapon, if it were in BattleBots, would work the best in the first 2 seasons, actually, when it's a single elimination tournament with randomly selected opponents at the start. And everyone has to have that fear, like, what happens if I fight Duck? If they're a spinner. And, Duck could randomly shut down a powerful spinner like Tombstone or like Gigabyte or something like that. But, if you get put up against a non-spinner, like if you get Bronco, then people can't say, oh, well, they're trying to take out this boring wedge bot or whatever. No, it's like, well, that's just the way the tournament worked out. Sorry. So, and then, of course, when you get put up against Bronco, all the spinners breathe a sigh of relief, like, okay, good, we're still in, and we don't have to fight them, this year. What do you think about that?
I don't think there's any conspiracy against Duck. I think it's just Duck's collides with the rules, and the rules are there, so it's Duck's fault for doing that. But like I was saying before, all the robots are really good now, so it's hard to stop a spinner even now. Like, you saw what Cobalt did to Duck, and they were still spinning. They were just hitting us so hard, and their weapon survived it all. So this whole notion of, let's just put one wedge in there so that wedge can stop all the spinners, I don't think that's true anymore.
I definitely don't think it's true. I think, spinners are so good and so reliable nowadays that wedges definitely, I don't think, would kill the sport. They're not even really that powerful on the live scene because, Last Rites and Toro Maximus have both kicked Original Sin to Kingdom Come several times each. I don't think Original Sin has ever beaten Toro Maximus, actually, come to think of it. I've seen them fight like 4 times or something on YouTube. I mean, actually, wait, how has Original Sin ever beaten Toro Maximus?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I know they've beaten Tombstone or Last Rites.
I remember that video. I mean, well, actually,
yes. I'm certain that Toro Maximus has beaten Original Sin.
Or sorry, no. Has Original Sin beaten Toro Maximus?
Yes, they've both
Toro Maximus.
beaten each other.
Because Toro Maximus has beaten them like at least 3 times.
Yeah.
Bottom line, verts are just ridiculous. Horizontals are getting a little bit phased out right now. If you really look at the field, Tombstone and Tombstone and Son of Waiachi are the only 2 really big horizontals in the competition. Or in the final 16, rather, and you got 11 verticals of some variety, and yet the field is still more diverse than last year.
Yeah, it's physics.
Yeah. Dragging ourselves.
The Earth is really heavy, and it's good to push against.
Yeah, dragging ourselves kicking and screaming back to Hypershock versus Huge. I am once again amazed by the reliability of Huge's weapon. Absolutely amazed. In 2 seasons, 10 fights now, it has never stopped working once. The only thing that can stop that weapon is if they break in half. Literally.
It is kind of surprising, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know if they're brushless? Zach, you've used brushless this season. Do you know if Huge is brushless?
I think they are brushed.
They are brushed. They're definitely brushed.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really surprised because the actual 2 rectangle bodies that it has between those wheels are actually very tiny. I would have thought for sure they were brushless.
Well,
they just
surprisingly,
compared to the wheels.
yeah, that's very true.
The only robot I can conceive of beating Bite Force this year because they almost beat him last year. And how do you beat a robot that always wins the ground game? Well, you get a robot that doesn't care about the ground game.
Oh, there you go. That's a good theory.
Dead certain. And of course, this is now Huge's second ever knockout. Their third if you shadily count Bronco, because even though they didn't score a knockout, they did kill Bronco at the end with their last attack, which is very impressive. Does anybody else have anything to say on this fight then?
Nope.
Let us move on.
All right, let's go for it. The Rumble, Railgun Max versus Bloodsport versus Uppercut. Uppercut wins by doing absolutely nothing.
How nice that must be.
Still bitter. I'm still bitter. You're still bitter. We're all still bitter.
Yep.
Dang bombshell. Dang judges. No, I thought this was a really good fight though as well. Bloodsport out of the arena ring itself, which was very sad to watch. I screamed when that happened because they were definitely winning this fight, and then they just weren't, and I was very sad.
Indeed, it had some very memorable moments.
I was big sad. And then Railgun Max just sort of died, and Uppercut came in and was like, "Hey, I can still do stuff. So, hey, judges, you want to give me the win?" And they were like, "Sure."
Often in a rubble, that's what happens. The last one's still twitching.
They went by knockout, or did they? Did it go to the judges? I guess Rumbles always go to the judges, though, right? Or no?
I think they're the last one moving. Yeah.
I can't believe I didn't write that down. But yeah, given that regular strategies don't really work in Rumbles because there's more opponents, what do you guys think of, like, okay, so Hal, you went through the Last Chance Rumble last year. What do you think of the idea of having a Rumble to decide your place in the top 16? Is there any integrity in that?
Falls in the category of entertainment that shouldn't be part of a competition. I just don't think Rumbles make any sense for who's going to be in the top 16. It just seems too
chaotic
and meaningful to leave it up to that kind of chaos at that point. Yeah. But it's good TV.
I can't disagree. It is good TV. This was a great fight, but of course the robot that took the least part in the action got the best. It won. And now it has to fight Bite Force in the first round. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, of course. Sorry.
Personally, if I was king of the world, I would get rid of Rumbles and I would get rid of mini-bots. Mini-bots bug me.
Really?
Me too.
Yeah, well, I guess Railgun and Max would destroy their own mini-bot right at the start. So maybe they don't like mini-bots either.
I don't know. Yeah. They just seem silly. It's like it's a way to get someone else on your team to have something to do during the match.
Well, hey, now wait a minute, Hal. I think so. Hal, you basically just said that Copperhead shouldn't be allowed in the competition because you said no mini bots.
Wait, Copper? Oh,
because Copperhead is the size of a laptop computer.
Yeah.
It's so tiny. I love it. And Duck is pretty dang small as well. Like who? Okay, I mean, obviously Duck is a little larger. I don't really know where I was going with that. Is Railgun Max bigger than Copperhead, though?
I think it was. They're pretty similar size.
Yeah.
Copperhead's a little chunkier on the X-axis, but it's on the Y-axis. It's real short, and on the Z-axis.
Who wins the small game is Falcon. That thing was made out of. Oh yeah, by a large. That's the smallest heavyweight I've ever seen. It is made out of pure half-inch steel plate. It is just density incarnated.
Jeez. I would not have expected Falcon to be the smallest. Unfortunately, Falcon didn't really work very well. It was just an experiment, very cheap experiments, as you and Robert informed us of when you guys were on our show way back in episode 3. I mean, geez, that just seems like so long ago.
You have a good memory, Ben.
Yeah. I also distinctly recall me saying that Ragnarok could beat Tombstone, and then you and Robert started laughing at me. I didn't know why at that time, and now I do.
Sorry, we gave too much away.
At the time I was thinking in my head, okay, that's either a really good sign or a really bad sign, and it turned out to be a really bad sign.
Yeah. Those dang removable links, man.
Those dang removable links, yeah. Boned them 3 times. Or actually, I don't know if the first fight they lost because of the removable link, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm just amazed at how upset the British get when you bring up the removable link thing. Like, it is militant. It's like talking politics in America.
Oh, you what, mate? I'll bash your fucking head in. I swear me mum.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. British people are funny. So let's see. Is there anything else to say on this fight, though? I mean, I said earlier that it was the least memorable fight of the night, and it was still great, and it was great. Bloodsport, super unfortunate to see them go out like that. They seemed a lot more reliable in this fight. Like their bar never really just broke down. Is that a dog? I heard somebody panting into the microphone.
That was just me.
All right. In that case, should we go ahead and move on then? Does anybody else have anything to say?
It was nice to see the enthusiasm that the rookies teams brought. That's fun to see.
Should have been Ribot, man. Ribot should have been here. In one of these fights. Ribot should have been in one of these fights. Anyway, if that's all we have to say, we should move on to Rotator versus Blacksmith. And can I just say, finally the double discs are back, and they work. They work good. What does Scott? You haven't really seen Rotator use its double weapons before this fight. What did you think of this battle?
I mean, they waited a long time to use that bottom rotator. Wasn't super effective. It was a good fight.
Yeah, and I mean, it could have been one of the greats if Rotator's drive didn't die almost immediately at the start. And I think that was really what won this fight for Blacksmith, because their hammer got taken out pretty early. They couldn't swing it a single time, and I think really just if Rotator was fully mobile the whole time, they would have just torn Blacksmith apart. But that's not what happened. So Hal, I've got a question for you now, since we were talking a lot about this. Do you think Blacksmith got damage points for Rotator's drive stopping at the beginning?
We talked about this match at home a lot when we watched it. It was kind of ironic that Blacksmith finally won a judge's decision in a match where their weapon didn't work.
Exactly.
True, yeah, because fuck logic.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know what to say about it anymore. I know why Blacksmith won, but I could logically argue against them winning that match if they don't have a weapon to score points with.
Absolutely.
I mean, at the very least, they had to get all the control and aggression points because, let's not forget the rules were changed in Season 2. You can score aggression points with a wedge now, you just don't score as much as an active weapon, but Rotator was never initiating a single attack after right at the beginning, so I would think that Blacksmith has to get all the aggression points. And since Rotator literally can't drive, it gets both control points as well, right? I mean, that's just kind of how that worked out in my head.
Yeah. I don't know, Zach, what did you think about that?
I assume it was a close decision, like a 5-4 split or something. So, I mean, from an audience perspective, Blacksmith was dominating the whole fight. So I think intuitively, someone who's not, scoring and judging would say, oh yeah, Blacksmith, was all over that match. But if you try and reason it out with the scoring mechanism that we've all been informed about, it's kind of hard to pull that judge's decision from it.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is kind of just a problem with favoring damage as well and defining aggression the way Battlebots always has, because it's once you look at it objectively, it's not the result you're expecting. It's it sometimes might not go the way of the obvious winner, right? Of course that robot won. How could you possibly, disagree? Then you look at the rules and the points and you're like, oh, this is awkward. I guess they really did win. And you kind of have to give it to Chomp instead of Bite Force, in those situations. So that's the thing I'm still bitter about. Rotator's discs. I mean, it's great to see them now. It's sad that they lost this fight, but man, they got a lot of power in them. They seem to hit about as hard as their bar that they've been using the whole time, except that it doesn't stop. It just keeps grinding away like Valkyrie's weapon, and it just never gets jammed up or anything. It just keeps hitting and dealing lots of damage.
I am very impressed with the progress Rotator has made, because when it first showed up, I thought that was a joke robot. But they have consistently improved it every year, and now it's a force to be reckoned with.
So I got one more question. Please tell me Hal got a standing ovation in the pits for finally getting some good luck and getting to the top 16.
I wasn't there because I was outside walking around pissed off because I lost to Yeti.
Zach?
I'm I have an interesting.
Interesting.
Let's just say Al is an interesting character. We'll leave it at that.
So y'all didn't cheer for him when he got back?
I think he deserved it. To put a robot like that together for so many years for Battlebots and not have it be the optimal winning design, but still be incredibly entertaining, I think that's praiseworthy.
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to remember who they're fighting first. It's Witch Doctor. That's right. Of course, the seedings have been revealed for supporters. I'm trying to make my bracket right now. I have no idea who's going to win a lot of the fights that are up there. I'm pretty sure Witch Doctor will win this one. Anyway, is that it? Is that all we have to say?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, I guess I have one more thing to say, and it's somebody asked Al, why didn't you just let Rotator get counted out? And he said, we didn't notice at the time. You know, in hindsight, it's pretty obvious, but at the time, we had no idea that they had one wheel that was dead. So, that's fair. Anyway, can we move on? Does anybody else have anything to say?
Nope.
Cool. So the next fight was Son of Waiachi versus Poison Arrow 2 Electric Boogaloo. This was an awesome match as well. What were you going to say, Zach?
You can't call me Electric Boogaloo. That's taken.
Well, I
That's
have
an awesome robot too.
I called Copperhead Poison Arrow 2 Electric Boogaloo back when you and Robert were with us the first time.
It does have a nice ring to it. I will give you that.
It does have a nice ring. So the alternate name for this match is Pain Part 2 Electric Boogaloo, because I was rooting for Copperhead against Son of Waiachi.
You were sorely disappointed.
Well, I wasn't disappointed with y'all's performance. I just realized how weird it is, the whole idea of telling somebody, I enjoyed that match where you lost. It's like you might as well say, I found it funny to watch your hopes and dreams get crushed right before your eyes.
Pretty much, yeah. That's kind of what I got out of that. Thanks,
so
Ben.
This fight is, of course, a rematch. Poison Arrow defeated Son of Waiachi by knockout back in Season 2. Awesome hit. The same hit happened in this match, but Son of Waiachi sadly didn't die this time.
Yeah, they have actually improved their robot substantially. What we blew up in Season 2, their mag motors actually separate from the shaft, the rotor in the shaft. And they took them a while to learn that, and once they fixed it, I mean, that has solved so many of Waiachi's reliability issues, and they've made other improvements too. And Copperhead was just a little bit behind the 8 ball. We were still kind of learning all the quirks of the new machine and had one other fatal flaw that didn't get revealed until that match, which turns out our speed controllers for the drive turn into maracas when they get hit really hard. You can hear the parts rattling around because they broke off the board. That's what happened to the drive. That first massive hit.
Would you say that Copperhead is overall a worse design than Poison Arrow for taking on horizontals? Because it's just as compact, but there's a lot of more like sticky outy gappage, jutting out parts around it, and also there's a lot more space around the drum and of course they got the forks in the front for a horizontal to potentially sideswipe and deal colossal amounts of damage.
Actually, no. I think Copperhead was actually a little better suited. Poison Arrow, if it took on a low horizontal like an undercutter, those little wedgelets that we rely on to keep the drum off the ground would have come right off. I know we took some big hits, and the wedgelets on Copperhead still failed us, but they were a lot more stout than what was on Poison Arrow. So I think, like Hal has said, the field of robots has just vastly improved these past couple of seasons that it's hard to keep up with.
Zach, what kind of speed controllers are you using that failed?
We're using the Vesk Trampa. So that's the 6.0. The problem was the way we had them mounted. We thought we had enough compliance in the system, but some weird bit of physics must have been putting a shock wave through the mounting system and just broke some capacitors loose off the board.
Huh.
But it never happened to the weapon ESC, which was also pretty rigidly mounted, and it kept on trucking.
So I've got a question about that as well. So it happened in this fight. It happened in your first fight. Why was the drum spinning forward initially before it got going the correct direction?
That's just brushless, sensorless woes.
Ugh.
Yeah, the controller basically has to guess. So it'll try and get the drum spinning at low RPM, and it just pulses the windings. And hopefully the drum will get going in the right direction, but half the time it starts in the wrong direction. So
Indeed. I've never seen a brushless motor cog like that as well. It usually judders back and forth in place before it starts. This one seems to go in the wrong direction at first.
Yeah,
half the time.
Every setup is different. It has different reactions, and you can make very minute adjustments to some of the tuning parameters, and makes it so much better or so much worse. It's truly an art form.
Yeah. I mean, brushless motors just are hard to get right, aren't they?
Absolutely. They're so finicky. We found probably a dozen ways to do it wrong before we got the one that worked fairly right.
So I don't know if y'all are aware of the type of brushless motors that Shatter and Deep Six were both running for their weapons this year. They are, what are they called? I don't know, but they're actually in-runners instead of outrunners. They go up to like 40,000 RPM or something, which is crazy. And they actually are sensorless, but they act like censored brushless motors because they are just such high-end motors, according to, like, that's basically Bots FC's words to me. I was like, so how do you have enough startup torque in them to run a hammer off them if they have no sensor? And they said they are essentially a sensorless brushless motor that acts like it has a sensor because this internal computer just is that good. And I was like, holy cow. So, why doesn't everybody use those? And then they said, well, a motor that goes up to 40,000 RPM is a little much to manage, especially for an in-runner. Most teams would find that annoying. But if you've got a drum spinner that goes at like 8,000 RPM, then a simple 5-to-1 gear ratio would fix that, wouldn't it?
Well, the thing that Shatter has going for it with the brushless is they've got an inertial load that doesn't take 4 seconds to get up to speed. Like if Copperhead's drum was geared for like a 2-second spin up instead of I think we're at like a 7-second right now, the startup torque wouldn't be an issue. Like it wouldn't be a problem at all. But because we want that high tip speed, it takes a lot of extra torque at the low end to get going, and that causes all sorts of sensorless problems. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, that makes sense to me as well. Like I actually asked Minotaur during their AMA if they'd heard of these motors, and they said we have not, but thanks for telling us. We'll definitely look into that. So hopefully, maybe I'll have contributed to next year's Minotaur just by letting them know of the achievements of a more experienced people. But
I've experimented with those motors, and I could get them to work for a drive, but for like spinning a big bar with a big moment of inertia, they just freaked out.
Huh. Maybe they do just work better for a hammer. Although, of course, Deep Six does use them for its weapon as well, and that's the biggest bar I've ever seen.
True.
That's true. I don't. Maybe it's a new version. They're Castle Creation motors, and maybe they've got a new version that I haven't played with. Maybe
it's weird, like how some things work and other things don't, even though just on paper it's like, well, yeah, these should work the same, right? It just often is not the case.
Yeah, with brushless, there's 20, 30 parameters you can adjust, and getting all of them right is the key.
Yeah.
Scott, you haven't said anything about this fight yet, have you? I don't think so.
Did you like it?
Man, I wanted Copperhead to kick the shit out of Sonny Watson, but it just didn't happen.
Vice versa, actually.
Yeah, I know, man. They hit y'all pretty hard. So they have a magnetic system that couples their motor to their shaft, huh? in the past?
Oh, no, it's gear driven. But what they were having an issue was the armature would separate from the shaft.
Oh,
because it was just
okay.
like pressed on.
Okay.
Scott, I
Yeah.
think he said mag motor earlier, and you might have heard that wrong.
Okay. Well, yeah, I wanted y'all to win, man, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
You think
Me too.
you'll?
Me too.
I mean, do you guys think y'all will bring back the same robots next year? That's one question for you, Zach. And then I'm afraid my phone's gonna die here any second now. But the other question I have for you guys is, did y'all have a lot less time to prepare for this episode, for this whole show, than you have in the past for other shows, whether it's Battlebots or other competitions that y'all have attended?
Yes.
I had a feeling y'all had much less time on this one, right?
Yeah. I think we had about 8 weeks, 7 or 8 weeks, whereas Poison Arrow was done in about 12.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you could see a lot of teams struggling early on, and, being Ben talked often about, why were upgrades that, everybody, of course, assumed an upgrade would be better, but it didn't always really work out that way. And I think that's probably because y'all just didn't have enough time to get it going, to get it developed.
Agreed. Yeah, there could have been a lot more planning and thought put into at least Copperhead's design. So.
Well, and I'm not trying to, insult you or anyone individual. I just think when you don't give people a lot of time or even much time at all, it's very hard. I mean, it's a complex system. There's a lot of construction involved. I think they hurt themselves by not giving everyone more time.
And unfortunately, it's kind of at the mercy of Discovery Channel signing their contracts. Because Battlebots understands it, and they would love to give us more time, but getting Discovery to understand that been difficult.
Our team's challenge was we weren't sure if we were going to be one team or two. So at relatively the last minute, we had to get Marvin and Duck ready at the same time.
Yeah, that's difficult, man. Well, I really thought everybody did, a very good job while not having as much time as they probably needed.
Yeah, I think the dream is when Battlebots can sign a multi-year contract with a network.
Yeah, that would be great.
Just okay, there's going to be 3 seasons, so everyone start building for that.
Yeah, definitely.
I wish show business worked like that. But I mean, even the most successful shows, like Game of Thrones, even was like, it's huge. I mean, it was huge until season 8 came out. Debate for later, but they were happy to get renewed even as late as the 4th season. They were all relieved when they got renewed. It's like, oh, good. I'm out of breath because I was just running up and down the stairs getting my charger for Scott while you were talking.
Good hustle.
I'm out of shape. I'm very
Imagine
out of shape.
if other sports worked that way, though. Like, okay, we're going to tell the Golden State Warriors in August whether there's going to be a season starting in October.
Yeah, it would be it would be a disaster. I mean, you would get what you would expect you would get, which is people not prepared.
Right. We think there's going to be a U.S. Open this year, but we're not sure. We're going to tell you in a couple of months.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, with all that said, I mean, so I should also say this as well, or actually ask this, Zach. If Scorpios' weapon was able to do the kind of damage it did, what the heck did Son of Waiachi do to you?
Surprisingly, not that much.
Really?
Yeah. Well, so he did dig a good chunk through the 1/2-inch side plates, but fortunately, there was just air behind that. So, yeah, no, we got the robot off the rails. I just needed a couple of new speed controllers, and it was back ready to go.
I am shocked. Did the drum not have any damage from going weapon to weapon with Son of Waiachi?
Not a scratch.
That's awesome.
I guess their hammers are made of titanium for reasons I'll never figure out, but that's not as hard as steel, so yeah. I guess that makes sense.
Whatever they're made out of, it's softer than what our drum is, because we've never had any chipping going up against Waiachi.
Huh.
Wait, you mean your drum isn't made out of copper?
Oh, now that's a tinfoil hat conspiracy right there.
Oh, we had a lot of fans convinced for a while.
Dang, Zach, I thought it was made out of wood. Let me see. So this apparently is the first time a heavyweight horizontal spinner has ever scored an out of the arena. Is that true?
Is it? Well, Bloodsport knocked itself out, I guess you could say. But
like they didn't really score an out of the arena, and also Railgun Max's weapon. They went weapon to weapon with them. So was it Railgun Max's out of the arena, or was it Bloodsport's?
Fair enough. Well, I am proud to be part of this new era that we live in of getting obliterated by Waiachi. Yes.
History in the making on BattleBots. Yeah, here it is, folks. The victim of the first ever heavyweight horizontal out of the arena. That rolls off the tongue.
Yep, still licking my wounds.
Well, I mean, all it needed was some new speed controllers. Not really a lot to lick. Yeah.
It's pretty easy.
I was PP3D, I remember, came really close to getting Behemoth or whatever out of the arena in Series 9. It barely didn't manage it, and that would have been the first. This ended up being the first, though. And I remember thinking at the time, when I realized that, I was like, that's probably never going to happen. I mean, come on, a horizontal getting it out of the arena. Psh. And now it has happened, and I was blown away when it did. So,
Props to Waiachi.
Props to Waiachi, indeed, yes. And their slower tip speed than most horizontals gave us really satisfying looking slow-mo shots at the end. You could very clearly see how well those hammers were connecting. It was awesome.
Yep, good engagement.
When that small hit on the side that broke off one of those frills, masterclass. That looked so nice.
Was it satisfying?
It was. It was. Was it satisfying for you, Zach?
Not so much.
Not so much. How about you, Hal? Did you get to see this fight live?
I don't take satisfaction in other people's pain. Especially when I'm on the phone with me.
Speaking of pain, should we go ahead and go on to the next fight?
Yes.
Please.
Alrighty. Scott, you good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Minotaur versus Cobalt. I'm not going to lie. I was expecting Minotaur to just mop the floor with Cobalt, but it actually didn't. Good Lord. Good Lord, was this a fight. I mean, some of the biggest hits we've seen all season was just in this one alone. I guess. So, Hal, you fought Cobalt earlier. What do you think you'd do if you fought Minotaur? Actually, Whoops has fought Minotaur before, hasn't it? Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
Any ideas as to how you'd go about that fight now?
Whoops fought Turo Maximus, and they hit us so hard that they threw us high against the wall and shattered the wall.
Oh, yeah.
So they actually had to stop the match for 45 minutes while they repaired the wall.
Was that the match where Toro Maximus was, like, for whatever reason, ignoring the announcer saying stop, stop, stop?
Yeah, where they ignored and ripped us to hell while we turned off our robot.
Oh shoot! Well, I'm not mad at them for that though, because it's loud and they might be a little too focused to really hear.
Yeah, I don't think it had anything to do with the sound. I think Daniel just gets in such a zone that the rest of the world doesn't exist.
I mean, yeah, look at his face while he's
He's so
while he's
intense.
doing this. Yeah, he's like, "Argh," like he's just mad, like, oh, I'm winning. Argh.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't have a good answer for what you do against Minotaur or Copperhead or any of those guys. There's so much energy and chaos, that there's so much luck involved about who hits who, where, and what happens, that you just go in there hoping for the best. If there is a season 5 and Duck is back, we have an idea for a plow against drums. If we have time to do multiple plow designs, but it's just a vicious amount of energy. Even we've fought Zach in the 60-pound weight class, and even in 60 pounds, it's horrendous.
I mean, yeah, that seems like it's difficult to do. Drum spinners are very good.
Yeah, every design has a weakness, and I would say that the drum spinner's weakness is they can't make quick turns.
I mean, Minotaur kind of can.
Yeah.
He slows down for him.
Yeah.
When he has to aggressively maneuver, he doesn't rev the drum at full speed.
Right.
And of course, sorry.
But at least you can get him to turn down the drum if he's concerned about that.
Mm-hmm.
So
No.
I think you might be able. You have to outdrive a drum, I guess, is the answer to your question.
I mean, pretty much, yeah. I mean, of course, we got to talk about that one hit. Like, that wasn't just a what the fuck moment. I was like, what the fuck? What? That was
Yeah, it actually went out of camera, didn't it? It
did, yeah. None of the cameras got it at its highest point, I don't think. That even during the replays, it was like the camera wide angle struggling to keep it in the frame.
Yeah.
Which was just insane. So I don't know if anybody noticed, but that was actually a double hit because Cobalt's up against the wall. Its back is to the wall, right? Its disc is spinning at full speed. Minotaur starts to get under it with its forks, and Cobalt leans back a tiny bit, and at the exact same millisecond as Minotaur's drum hits the underside of their wedge, their own weapon connects with the wall behind them and strikes downward. So it was like both weapons combined to just launch Cobalt into space. So I don't even I don't even want to know the odds of that happening, but that was crazy, and I'm glad it did. And after that, Cobalt still works.
Yeah.
I mean, Dave, what are you doing, man? Jeez, like you've built a reliable machine to survive that. Multiple hits like that throughout the match. And Minotaur's drum stopped working after that hit, so I mean, this is Robots, and their drum is apparently less reliable than Cobalt's weapon, which is crazy.
So
I don't know what was going on with Minotaur's drum. They kept smoking. I'm guessing their belts were rubbing up against the belt cover. They didn't have enough clearance there, but I never talked to the guys to find out what the deal was.
I didn't notice any smoke actually coming out of Minotaur. Maybe I'm just not remembering correctly.
Maybe it wasn't that fight, but other times when their drum was dying, it was smoking.
It might have been jammed up by something. Yeah. I wouldn't put it past the seemingly random magic laws of physics that apply during robot combat. But so I actually okay, wait. I have a question for you, Scott.
Okay.
Has Minotaur turned their performance around officially in your eyes?
Well, I mean, first off, when you look at the win-loss record, it has, because, when you start winning, you can definitely say that you've turned it around. I certainly don't think, and of course this is from a very new viewer perspective, I don't think they're as powerful as they were last year. I don't know if they tried to make some upgrades or something, and were bit by a lack of preparation time. I mean, it looks like the same robot in many ways, but the bottom line is I just don't think that they're still to the level that they were at last year, or it might be just like Hal and Zach are saying that the other robots really have gotten much better, which will make it look like you slipped or make it look like you're not as strong as you were in the past.
Make it look like you're worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I'll definitely moan about with Minotaur, it's that I keep saying this, but it keeps being a problem. They can't stop wheeling. Their forks keep popping up off the floor, and Cobalt keeps getting under them, even though their wedge didn't even touch in the floor, which is just infuriating.
Yeah. Copperhead's center of gravity was actually highly engineered to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I asked them in their AMA, like, are you guys ever going to move your wheels further back? And they were like, well, I mean, we want to, but at the same time, we don't want to because this version handles a bit better and self-rights a bit better. But it does basically, like, it does bug us that our forks can't stay on the floor. And I was like, yeah, I mean, you know, y'all do you, but in the alternate, like, okay, I didn't say this to them, obviously, but in the alternate universe where Minotaur's not wheeling constantly, they win this fight in under a minute, I would expect, because they can just get straight under Cobalt's wedge and get a massive hit each time they try, and Cobalt can't really, you know, answer to that. I mean, I don't know. That's just what I was thinking.
Well, it's a good thought process because that's exactly what Copperhead was born of. Just to have a lot of weight on those forks to get under all these wide wedges.
I mean, yeah, like that. Yeah, that pretty much is the best thing you can do, really, in this ground game is have forks and have a lot of weight on them, so then nobody can get under you.
A lot of pressure. That's all the wedge game now.
Yeah, I mean, did you guys really face anybody who was going to contest your ground game though? I guess you fought Scorpios, but you got into them a whole bunch of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then who's your next opponent? Gruff, who doesn't really have a floor scraping wedge, so. Mm-hmm. Then you fought Kronos, who was a horizontal, so, you know, no wedge. And then, who was your... Warhawk, right. Yeah, right. You guys out-wedged Warhawk, out-forked them, and completely tore their asshole inside out.
Yeah, I'm proud of that one.
Oh, yeah, that was an amazing fight. Like, I don't know that I've properly gotten to say it yet. I said it last episode, but, man, y'all were cosplaying Season 2 Minotaur with that one. That was intense. That shit was calculated, and it was like mind-blowing how hard you kicked their ass.
It was enjoyable.
It was. I'll bet it was. And there's nothing sweeter. There is one thing sweeter than seeing your favorite robot dominate, and it's seeing your own robot dominate.
Absolutely.
And you being the one driving it. Were you driving in that fight?
Yeah, that was me.
Excellent.
So, yeah, it felt good.
Cool. I mean, I guess that really is all there is to say. Like, Hal, you got anything else to say about this fight?
Just for the sake of conversation, why did Minotaur win?
What? Well, I guess this kind of goes back to the obvious winner thing I was talking about earlier. Like, well, duh, they were the obvious winner. I think they did more damage than Cobalt. Cobalt maybe gets 1 damage point because they took out Minotaur's weapon.
Right.
Well, actually, I mean, they were the ones who were cornered there. They didn't initiate that hit that took out Minotaur's drum.
So Minotaur's weapon is broken.
Yeah.
Cobalt lost their little wedgie thing, but still worked completely. Then towards, what is the last third of the match?
Minotaur was pinning them a whole bunch, though.
Just pinning them?
Yeah, they were showing a lot more control.
Yeah.
And I think
shouldn't have won. I'm just saying it's an interesting question.
I think maybe Cobalt's aggression gets scored in a similar way to Rotators against Blacksmith, because even though their weapon was spinning, they weren't really the ones bringing the hits to their opponent. Their opponent was just kind of driving into it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the reason they were driving into it was because, you know, that's kind of what they have to do in order to, you know, engage with their opponent. Right. Is that really aggression? I don't think it is.
These are all good questions for you to see if you can get Lisa and Derek and who was the other judge?
Jason, right?
Yeah, Jason Bardis. See if you can get him on the show.
I've thought about having Chris, Kenny, and Jenny. I never realized their names rhymed until now on the show. I never thought about getting the judges for some reason. That's a great idea.
They'd have some great perspective.
And they're all roboteers themselves, former roboteers.
Yeah.
I want Complete Control to come back so bad. That'd be awesome. That's all I have to say about this fight as well. Anything else? Scott?
No, I kind of agree with Hal, or at least speculate with Hal about why did Minotaur win.
Yeah, Scott and I actually watched this episode together. The last time we did that was for episode 4, way back. And I like, as basically as soon as the fight ended, I was like, well, Minotaur's got that. And Scott said, hey, now, you can't just say that. And I was like, well, I kind of can, because, you know, it looks like they won. And they ended up winning. And now that Hal brings it up, I'm kind of thinking maybe you know, maybe they didn't earn as many points as we thought.
Maybe there's something.
Tinfoil hat time again?
If I was king of the world, or at least king of BattleBots,
yeah,
I would have it so the judges would have a big red button in front of them, and if they're having trouble deciding who won the match, they slam the buttons and the match goes a minute longer.
Oh, that's harsh.
That's
a little harsh.
Why?
That's not harsh at all.
Keep fighting.
It is a metal idea.
Close.
Yeah. I'm gonna need some more batteries.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm thinking that might give a big advantage to Duck.
Well, maybe, but
How long do Duck's batteries last? Like, what percent are they at after a fight?
they're supposed to last 8 minutes, but I've never tested it. It's dangerous to drain your lipos too much, so I've never really tested it.
You get problems with the magic white smoke, right?
And the flames, actually, with that.
Ugh.
You're supposed to keep your lipos at 50% capacity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was not aware of that.
Copperhead got down to 20% at one after the Gruff match.
Oof.
That seriously damages their ability, their lifetime as far as charge cycles go.
Huh. I guess that makes sense. Anything else to say, Zach, I guess? Scott and Hal have already said they don't really have anything more.
No, thank you for having us on the show.
Oh, yeah, you guys are great. Do you guys have any sponsors you want to thank before we go ahead and close out?
Absolutely, yeah. Any of your water jet needs, Rocky Mountain Water Jet is where it's at. Those guys, they can hold like 0.004 of an inch tolerance with a water jet in 1-inch hard ox on a medium quality cut. It is absolutely insane how well they know their machines. So, Rocky Mountain Water Jet.
Well, that's pretty dang metal if they can get it like that. Anything else, Zach?
That's it for me.
Cool. Hal?
My sponsor is Protolabs, protolabs.com. They're a quick turnaround fabrication shop that does additive and subtractive manufacturing, and they're very reliable and do great work. And if you need something done quickly, go to protolabs.com.
Excellent. That's all fine and dandy. What did everybody think of this episode? I thought it was great.
I thought it was fantastic. I mean, it's all the best bots fighting it out. I wish it would have been a lot more fun if Duck had won.
Well, of course, yeah. You know, it would have been one less vertical spinner in the competition at the end of it all.
Yeah.
I say that. I was rooting for Copperhead against Sunwayachi.
Yeah.
I like Copperhead, dang it.
But the best is yet to come, right? You got the top 16 now.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I thought it was great. I mean, you know, any way you look at it, the tournament has started. It started with a bye for the first 8, and the next 16 fought it out for the final 8 slots, and it's on. You know, really, any way you look at it, the tournament started last week on the last episode.
Yeah, I was. I don't know if Zach agrees, but I thought it was really smart of the producers to do the top 24 configuration that they did. It made a lot of sense. and
agree.
give everybody a chance to prove themselves.
Yeah,
What
with
do you
so
think,
many
Zach?
competitive robots this year, I mean, absolutely.
I mean, for the sake of pride, I think they should have called it the top 24 so that, people who didn't make the top 16 could say, I was in the top 24 this year. But, I guess, like, it's kind of an unofficial term, I guess. But, yeah, so we're all in agreement. This episode was great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I hope that the final 16 lives up to the expectations and it's just a hell of a time the whole way through. Is it?
How could it not be? You got the best of the best now.
Hell
it's
yeah.
going to be entertaining.
And it's single elimination. No more messing around.
Sawblaze will avenge you. Zach. And Death Roll will avenge you, Hal. I hope so, because, I'm rooting for them. Hashtag Sawblaze is best blaze. Sawblaze for champion 2019.
Death Row's been a great tournament so far. They're undefeated, right?
They are undefeated, and so is Hydra, Witch Doctor, and Bite Force as well. Well, anyway, thank you everybody for watching. This was a ton of fun to record. The episode was a ton of fun as well. I've been Mokemeister from Reddit. Ben, your host. This has been my co-host, Scott.
Thanks so much for having me, Ben. Zach, thanks for joining us, as well as Hal.
It was a pleasure, you guys.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Night.